Today, we're diving into something called analogical reasoning, or AR. Our sources, well, they point to this as a real engine behind how we innovate, how we learn deeply. The mission here is to really show you, the listener, how training this one thing, this cognitive process, can actually optimize your brain structurally, make you master any subject faster and, well, deeper.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that spark, that innovation. It often doesn't come from thin air. It's usually about connecting ideas that seem, totally separate on the surface. And AR is the bedrock here. It's that cognitive skill of spotting the deep underlying similarities between different concepts.
Right. So it's not just about, say, memorizing facts or definitions. It sounds much more fundamental. Our science pages mention something called structure mapping. What's that about and why is it, hard for us to do automatically? We tend to just see the surface, don't we?
We do. It takes real cognitive effort to ignore those immediate things, the colors, names, the specific situation, and instead focus on the principles underneath, the causal links, the relational patterns. It's about the how and why, not just the what. And our sources stress that your learning system often needs an explicit push, a challenge to make that shift.
Okay, so that's where the actual training comes in. The platform we're looking at deliberately makes you build bridges between domains. I
Mhm.
thought those examples were great. Like, how is this business ecosystem like a rainforest?
Exactly.
Huh?
That's a perfect example. You have to consciously ignore that, a company doesn't have leaves, and a rainforest doesn't file quarterly reports. Instead, you map the structure. Things like competition for resources, maybe symbiotic partnerships, how the system depends on outside inputs, even how fragile it might be. You're taking the known structure of the rainforest that's the base and applying its logic, its architecture, to understand the business, the target.
Okay, I get the comparison part. But how does doing that actually boost deep learning across totally different subjects? Like, really make learning stick and transfer?
Well, that's the absolute core of it. That's how you get successful transfer of learning. AR works by aligning that familiar structure, the relational setup of the base concept, the rainforest in our example, with the new thing you're trying to learn, the target. And by finding that alignment, that shared structure, you can project insights. You can make inferences about the new subject based on what you already know about the base. It means you're not just learning isolated facts over and over.
Okay, so the knowledge isn't just sitting there inert, it becomes active, applicable. So if I learned about, I don't know, water irrigation using an analogy, I could potentially use that same structural understanding for something like blood circulation.
Potentially, yes, if the deep structural relationships are similar. Successful transfer hinges on prioritizing those higher-order relations, the cause and effect, the constraints, the goals, over just matching surface features. Doing these kinds of structured comparison tasks, it builds that mental muscle you need to spot novel solutions or apply an idea from one field to a completely different one. And that shift from just facts to seeing these universal deep structures, well, that's what really marks out an expert problem solver, according to the research.
It sounds like it actually changes how your brain organizes information.
It seems to, yes. The research, like Gentner's work on structure mapping, suggests that when you do these analogical comparisons repeatedly, you start encoding these shared relational skeletons. So instead of needing, say, 50 separate facts for 50 different things, you might store one core structural skeleton that works for 5 of them, or 10. You strip away the surface noise.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the learner, to you listening. By doing these AR tasks, you're not just learning the content of the analogy, you're actually training your brain to look for and find these deep patterns systematically, which should make all your future learning faster and, crucially, deeper. The knowledge becomes genuinely useful, applicable, not just stuck in one context, and it should stick around longer, right? Resisting forgetting.
Exactly. That focus on the structural mapping helps make the knowledge robust. It helps it resist the forgetting curve because it's encoded more deeply, more relationally, and it means you can perform better, even when you face problems that look different on the surface, but share that underlying structure.
So here's a final thought to chew on then. If making these connections between seemingly separate ideas like managing team morale and tending a garden is what experts do, what happens when we get better and maybe even automate parts of that search for structural similarity? How fast could you potentially reach mastery in the next complex thing you decide to tackle?